So we're right in the middle of the study, and I can't really share a lot of details because we haven't really presented formally or published the results yet. We've got a ways to go yet. But I will just share that the objective of the study is to really determine if a ketogenic intervention can have a positive effect on scores or self-reported scores of depression. And this is primarily in students at Ohio State University who have major depression at baseline. So we've enrolled about a half dozen subjects so far, and the early data, which involves surveys of depression, we're doing a lot more advanced testing too that'll come out later, such as MRI and some structural and functional MRI, blood work, and so forth. But as far as our primary outcome, which was just depression scores, all of our participants had major reductions in depression that happened quite early on and were sustained out to 12 weeks. So even with a half dozen subjects, we have a very strong signal, which we kind of pitched this as a pilot study, principle sort of thing, to then help inform a larger study that probably be a randomized controlled clinical trial, maybe a comparison trial to a Mediterranean diet or some other treatment. There are several principles and characteristics of a ketogenic diet that we think are really important and critical to make the eating patterns safe and effective, and most importantly, sustainable for folks. This is more of a hybrid approach. But our kind of two overarching goals with the ketogenic intervention is because we want these to be translatable. We want these to, these interventions, we're testing both feasibility in many ways, can people stay on these diets, and also efficacy. The two things that are really important for us is, number one, people have to enjoy the diets. I mean, there has to be a certain amount of pleasure associated with it. So we're trying our best to make the diets, enjoyable for folks. So we're catering to their food preferences and so forth. Now, obviously, there's caveats. I mean, we want them to be pleasurable, but they have to follow the principles. And one of the big principles is they have to be in ketosis. Yeah. Otherwise, it's not a ketogenic.
Defines the diet. Yeah.
So, and that's primarily related to their carbohydrate and protein intake. So we're customizing that to the individual because people vary. But other than that, we let people kind of choose their own food sources and so forth, and then we'll provide education on a personalized level and adjustments if needed if they're not in ketosis. A couple of decades ago, where that was truly metabolic ward studies, where they did underfeeding, overfeeding, exercise studies in a metabolic ward in identical twins. And what they showed was that, and this one experiment is fascinating, they had people exercise. I think they made them cycle for about 600 extra kcals per day, so a couple hours of cycling. And then they fed them their calories that would maintain their weight if they weren't cycling. So, they were burning an extra 600 kcals per day for several weeks. And they got about 7 sets of twins, I think, that completed the study. And what they showed was that extra 600 kcal deficit translated into wildly varying weight losses. So wow. Yeah. I think if you take, 3,500 kcals is 1 pound of fat loss, which obviously that has problems, but just on the surface, you would have expected that 600 kcals over several weeks would have translated into something like 7 or 8 kilogram weight loss. What they showed was there was one twin pair that lost almost that much. There was another pair of twins that basically lost no weight. And these people were being fed and monitored. There's no cheating going on here. This is stuff you'll never see published again. So what was interesting is you had wildly varying weight losses in response to this caloric restriction induced by exercise, but the within twin concordance was much higher. So if you were one of these, if you were one of the participants that lost only 1 kilogram, so did your sibling. So what it shows is the ability to translate exercise into weight loss in this case is highly dependent on your genetics.
These were monozygotic twins or not? Okay. Wow. So I would say the exercise intervention caused metabolic adaptations that I would say enhance metabolic efficiency, and that exercise-induced enhancement of metabolic efficiency may have preserved, energy either through T3, reduced T3, or it's probably hormone, probably a multifaceted sort of array of things.
What they published a couple years later, because I don't think it wasn't a popular result, and this is not a popular statement in the exercise world. But what accounted for the majority of that was resting energy expenditure. So what they showed was that exercise actually decreases resting energy expenditure, which most people just the opposite. If you exercise, it increases. But on average, it actually, in the context of caloric restriction, decreases energy expenditure more if you exercise.